She was standing at the far end of the platform, holding a paper cup with both hands like it was the only warm thing left in the world. I noticed her because of the coat. It was mine. Not similar to mine. It was mine. The olive green wool coat with the small brass button missing on the left cuff. I had donated it 2 years ago, along with 3 bags of things I no longer knew what to do with. And now, here it was, on the shoulders of a girl who couldn't have been older than 19, standing 30 feet away from me at Gate 4 of the Millbrook Station on a Tuesday morning in November. I almost didn't say anything. I almost turned back to my coffee and my phone and the long list of things I was already late for. But I kept looking at that missing button. My name is Nora. I was 41 that year, recently separated, living in a 2-bedroom apartment on Caldwell Street that felt about 3 times larger than it needed to be. I commuted to the station every Tuesday and Thursday for work consultations in the city. I had a routine. I had a coffee order. I had a specific bench I preferred near the second pillar where the draft wasn't as bad in winter. I was not, by nature, someone who started conversations with strangers, but that coat had been my mother's before it was mine. She'd given it to me the autumn before she died, pressing it into my hands outside a restaurant after Sunday dinner, saying it was too heavy for her now, that her shoulders had gotten too narrow, that I should take it before the cold came. I wore it for 6 years. When I finally let it go, I thought I was letting go of the grief that had built up in its lining. Seeing it again felt like receiving a letter that had been lost in the mail for 2 years. I picked up my bag and walked toward her. She looked up when I got close. She had tired eyes, not sad exactly, but the kind of tired that goes deeper than sleep. She was wearing old sneakers that were slightly too large and a gray scarf that didn't quite match anything else. The cup in her hands had a gas station logo on it. "I'm sorry," I said. "I know this is strange, but that coat? Where did you get it?" She blinked. Not defensively, more like she was trying to decide how honest to be. "Goodwill," she said. "On Route 9, about 18 months ago." "I donated it," I said. "It was my mother's." She looked down at the coat, then back at me. "Do you want it back?" I almost said yes. The reflex was immediate. But then I looked at her again. The gas station coffee, the 2 big shoes, the careful way she held herself in a place where she didn't quite belong. And I said, "No, I just wanted to know it was somewhere." She tilted her head slightly. "That's a strange thing to need to know." "I know," I said. There was a pause, the kind that could go either way. "I'm waiting for the 9:15, she said. "To Harwick." "I'm on the same train," I said. She nodded once and looked back at the tracks. I went back to my bench, but I didn't look at my phone. The 9:15 to Harwick was 20 minutes late that morning. I noticed her shift her weight from foot to foot 3 times before she finally sat down on the metal bench closest to the track edge. She didn't take out a phone. She just watched the empty rails like she was waiting for something she wasn't entirely sure was coming. I told myself to leave it alone. Then I picked up my coffee and walked back over. "You can sit somewhere warmer," I said, nodding toward the enclosed waiting area. "The benches inside have heat vents." She glanced toward the glass doors. "I don't want to miss it." "They announce it. You can hear it from inside." She thought about this for a moment. Then she picked up her bag, a canvas tote with a broken zipper held shut with a safety pin, and followed me in. We sat down across from each other near the window that faced the platform. I bought her a second coffee from the machine by the wall, the better kind, without asking if she wanted it. She accepted it without making a big thing of that either. "Are you visiting someone?" I asked. "I'm meeting someone," she said. Then she corrected herself. "Someone I've never actually met." That sentence sat between us for a moment. "Family?" I asked. She wrapped both hands around the new cup. "Maybe. I don't know yet." I understood then that she wasn't going to explain more than that, and I understood that she wasn't being evasive. She was being precise. She genuinely didn't know yet. "How far is Harwick?" she asked. "About 40 minutes on the express, an hour 10 if it stops at Denning." She nodded slowly like she was calculating something. "Is this your first time going?" I asked. "First time going anywhere like this," she said. Her name was Marin. She told me after the train finally arrived and we found seats across the aisle from each other. She said her name like she was checking to make sure it still fit her. She was 20, not 19. She had grown up in the eastern part of the state, in a small town I'd never heard of. And she had been living in Millbrook for about 8 months, working at a copy center near the university. She was quiet in the way that some people are quiet. Not because they have nothing to say, but because they have learned not to say things until they're certain they mean them. She asked what I did. I told her I worked in hospital administration, overseeing patient services for a regional health network. She nodded like that made sense for someone who had bought a stranger coffee without asking. The fields outside the train windows were flat and gray-brown in November. Every few miles there was a farmhouse, a water tower, a cluster of bare trees standing close together as if for warmth. "The person in Harwick," I said after a while. "Is it someone you found, or someone who found you?" She was quiet for a moment. "Both, I think." She looked out the window. "I found an old letter in a box of my grandmother's things after she passed in the spring. It was addressed to someone else, but my grandmother had it, which meant she must have kept it for a reason. And inside there was a name and a town." "Harwick," I said. "Harwick," she said. "And you reached out?" "I wrote a letter, old-fashioned, paper, envelope, stamp. I didn't want to call. It felt too easy to hang up." She turned back from the window. "She wrote back." "She," I repeated. Marin nodded. "Her name is Ruth. She's 73. She said in her letter that she had wondered for a long time if anyone would ever write." I felt something shift in my chest. Not pity. Something closer to recognition. "How long have you been thinking about making this trip?" I asked. "Since August," she said. "It took me until now to feel brave enough." I didn't say that was a long time to carry something alone. I didn't need to. We arrived in Harwick at 10:42. The station was smaller than Millbrook. Just one covered platform and a brick building that looked like it had been a post office in a previous life. The air was colder here, and the sky had gone the particular shade of white that comes just before the first snow of the season. Marin stood on the platform with her canvas tote and looked around. "Do you know where you're going from here?" I asked. She said to take the Route 7 bus to Elm and get off at the library. She'd meet me there. She looked at the small parking lot. I've never met anyone like this before. Someone who might be. She stopped. Someone who might change the shape of your family, I said. She looked at me. Yes, exactly that. The bus stop was a short walk. I knew this station. I had passed through it a dozen times in the years before my separation, when my husband's family had gathered twice a year in a house outside Harwick, and I had sat in that same brick building waiting for trains that ran late in winter. I knew where the bus stop was and which direction the library stood. I'll walk you to the stop, I said. She didn't argue. We stood under the small metal shelter for 11 minutes before the bus came. Neither of us talked much. There was a kind of stillness between us that had settled in somewhere around the 40-minute mark on the train. The comfortable kind that only comes when two people have stopped performing ease and actually found it. When the bus came around the corner, Marin picked up her bag and stood. Then she turned to me. "Why did you come talk to me?" she asked. "At the station. You could have just looked and walked away." I thought about it honestly before answering. "Because of the missing button," I said. "My mother lost it somewhere she couldn't remember. It used to bother me when I wore the coat. This small absence I couldn't fix. When I saw it on you, I think I wanted to know the coat had found someone who didn't mind." She looked down at the left cuff for a moment. "I noticed it when I bought it," she said. "But I liked it anyway. It made it feel like it had already been somewhere." The bus doors opened. She stepped toward them, then stopped once more. "Thank you," she said. "Not for the coffee or the directions. For something harder to name." "Go meet Ruth," I said. She smiled, the first full one I had seen from her, and got on the bus. I had a 3-hour window before my return train. I found a diner 2 blocks from the station and ordered eggs and toast and a coffee I didn't particularly need. I sat in a booth by the window and watched the street outside go quietly about its business. A woman walked past with a dog on a leash. 2 men in reflective vests crossed against the light. A girl, not Marin, just a girl, stood outside a closed bookshop reading the hours posted on the door, then turned and walked in the other direction. Normal Tuesday things, the kind of ordinary that hums along under everything else. I thought about my mother's coat and where it had been since I let it go. I thought about the 2 years it had spent in some Goodwill on Route 9 before Marin found it. I thought about how many people might have passed it on the rack and kept walking, and how she had stopped, and whether that meant anything or whether it was just the ordinary randomness of secondhand things finding their way through the world. I thought about Ruth in Harwick, 73 years old, who had written back to a stranger's letter and said she had wondered for a long time if anyone would write. What does it take to live with that kind of waiting? To hold a question for decades, not knowing if an answer is coming, and still leave the light on for it? I thought about my own boxes. The ones still in the back of the closet in the apartment on Caldwell Street. The ones I hadn't opened since the separation. The ones that held things I hadn't decided yet whether to keep or release. My mother's handwriting on a birthday card I had saved but not read again. My husband's handwriting on a grocery list I hadn't thrown away, which made no sense and made complete sense at the same time. There is something that happens when you watch someone walk toward a truth they've been gathering courage for. It doesn't make your own truth simpler. but it makes the avoiding of them feel lonelier. Deliberate almost. Like a choice you're making every single day without admitting that you're choosing. I took the 2:15 back to Millbrook. The train was nearly empty. I found a window seat on the western side and watched the same flat fields pass in the other direction. The sky had started to release the snow it had been holding all morning. Soft, unhurried flakes that melted as soon as they touched the glass. I had not spoken to my sister in 14 months. We had argued about our mother's estate, not the money, which was modest, but the objects. Who would keep the photos? Who would keep the dishes? Who had the right to the things she had touched most often? We had each said things that were true and unkind, and then we had gone quiet, and the quiet had stretched into something that felt permanent. I had told myself it was her turn to reach out. I had told myself I was waiting for an apology I deserved. I had told myself a lot of things in 14 months. The train passed through Denning without stopping. The snow was picking up. A woman 2 rows ahead was reading something on her phone, smiling quietly at whatever it was. An older man near the front was asleep with his head against the window, his breath fogging the glass in small rhythmic clouds. I thought about Marin on that bus to Elm Street, holding her canvas tote with the safety-pinned zipper, going to meet a woman named Ruth who had kept a letter for decades in a box. I thought about what courage actually looks like when it isn't dramatic, when it's not loud or visible, when it's just a 20-year-old girl who writes a paper letter with a real stamp instead of a text, because she understood that paper is harder to dismiss. Who waits until November, until a Tuesday, until the 9:15 that runs late, and then goes anyway. No one watching. No applause at the end of the platform. Just herself and a bus number and an address she had probably looked at on a map 30 times before she finally got on the train. By the time we pulled into Millbrook, I had already decided. I sat in my car in the station parking lot for a few minutes. Then I found my sister's number and I called it. She picked up on the 4th ring. Her voice was careful. Mine was too. "Lauren," I said. "It's me." A pause. Not a hostile one. The kind that is trying to find its footing. "I know," she said. "I've been thinking about Mom's coat," I said, which made no sense out of context, but somehow felt like the right door to open. "And I think I've been holding on to the wrong things." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "Me too." It wasn't an apology. Not exactly. But it was the kind of sentence that makes space for one. We talked for 45 minutes in that parking lot. The snow kept falling, and I kept the engine running for warmth, and we talked about our mother, and about the boxes, and about the 14 months, and about a few things that had been true for much longer than that. We didn't solve everything. We didn't try to. But by the end, we had agreed to meet for dinner the following Sunday, at the diner on Route 12 where our mother used to order the same thing every time. After we hung up, I sat for a while with the phone in my lap. Somewhere in Harwick, a girl in an olive green coat was sitting across from a woman named Ruth, probably holding something warm, probably trying to figure out what to say first. Probably surprised by how ordinary the moment felt after all that preparing. Probably finding that the truth, when you finally reach it, is less like a door slamming open and more like a window cracking just enough to let the air in. I don't know what Marin found in that library. I never saw her again. I don't even know her last name. But I think about her sometimes. About the way she stood on that platform holding a gas station coffee with both hands, already carrying more than she let on. But I think about the missing button sometimes. How my mother never replaced it. How I inherited that small absence along with everything else. How the coat passed through a Goodwill on Route 9 and ended up on the shoulders of a girl traveling towards something she could only half name. And how she looked at the empty cuff and decided the coat was more interesting because of what it lacked. Some absences, I think, are not things to fill. They are just the shape of where something used to be. And maybe that shape is enough. Maybe it tells you where you came from without demanding that you stay. My mother's coat is somewhere in Harwick now. I hope it's warm.